We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit, quoted by Aristotle. Research and biology class have made me an expert, air quotes, on this subject. We covered this in biology, not too much, but it helped me a lot. There's three types of neuroplasticity, and I will explain later. Developmental, activity slash compensatory masquerade, and injury-induced or cross-modal reassignment. Now, neuroplasticity sounds like a complicated word, but it's really not. Neural, nerves, like your nervous system, helps you feel pain, happiness, all that stuff. Plasticity means the ability to reform or reorganize your brain. So together, it's the ability to reform your nerves and reorganize your nerves in your brain. Developmental neuroplasticity is when you're born or just about to be born, hence the fetus. Activity-based neuroplasticity is when you're doing an activity such as soccer, band, stuff like that. Your brain forms connections when you're doing the activity, so you can know how to do it. And injury-based neuroplasticity is when you hurt yourself. I do that a lot. It's when you have to relearn or reconnect the connections that were lost, so you can actually remember how to do it. So let us go back to before we were born. Yeah. Time travel. According to the Span Developmental book of psychology, my mom's college textbook, a newborn baby has over 100 billion nerve cells. But before we can get to 100 billion, we have to go back in time. So when you're inside your mom, you're chilling, the brainstem is formed by the nerve cells, and it forms the spinal cord and the brainstem at the same time. So it's like a stick with a ball at the end, kind of what it looks like. And all the connections in the nerves are what is formed. So spinal cord is connections of nerves and the brainstem, it's all connected. So everything is together. And when you're outside of your mom, when you're born, you have a new environment. And you have to process all of these things, like you have toys, and you have breathing, and blinking, and blood pumping through your veins. All of those things have connections in your brain. And when you repeat those exercises, the connections get deeper, or stronger for that matter. Which brings me to my next point. When we get older, we want to do stuff, because we don't want to just sit there, couch, take it. That's boring. So we want to do stuff. So activity-based neuroplasticity is when you do things and your brain forms connections based on the thing that you're doing. According to Mike Torres, author of Neuroplasticity, forming habits is hard, but it's possible for everybody because of your brain. Everybody's brain has the possibility and capability of forming connections with everything you do. So, for example, playing percussion, that's what I do. When I first started out, I didn't know what I was doing, and I was like, oh my god, what's going on? And then after I did it, I was like, okay, this is easy. So the connections were stronger, and I felt confident. So connections were stronger and deeper and more accurate, per se. When doing another activity the same way, like playing the drums, it's completely different from percussion. So you have another way of doing things, and when you learn how to do it the other way, your brain forms connections again. It forms connections all the time. You're even getting connections right now, just sitting here. And when you do the other way of the activity, the connections are made, but they're not as strong because you already know how to do it. So the first way you did it was very strong, the connections were strong, but the other way you did it weren't as strong and were most likely being forgotten. The connections they weren't able to process and were most likely forgotten or weakened over time. And when we're doing an activity such as soccer or other sports, you have the likelihood to get hurt or injured. Let me or modal reassignment. It's when you get injured, your brain does things differently. Your brain actually works more after you are injured because your brain has to work harder to create more connections to compensate for the ones that were injured during the accident. According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, cross-modal reassignment entails input into a certain section of the brain that was lost. So, for example, being deaf. You weren't able to hear, but you use your hands and your mouth at the same time. So, when you use your hands, you're talking to somebody. I'm like signing to somebody, and they're using their hands and their mouth at the same time. They're using their hands so we can actually hear what they're saying, but they're also using their mouth so we can actually comprehend what it looks like to hear. Because our hands are just forming the words, but our mouth actually shows what it looks like. And synaptic pruning is very important. Synaptic pruning is just like pruning a tree. You cut the branches off that are unnecessary or dead, for example. Synaptic pruning happens in all three stages: developmental, activity-induced, and injury-induced. Developmental is the most important because when you're born, you have all these connections that are unnecessary, and you have to cut them down to what is necessary, like pumping blood, and breathing, all the necessary stuff that you never think about because it's just programmed into your body. Neuroplasticity goes full circle all the time. So, as Aristotle said, you do things repeatedly and the connections are stronger. But if I repeated this speech, you guys wouldn't want to listen to it again, and I don't feel like standing anymore.